I'm like a kid in the candy store talking about and thinking about the debate that is about to take place. I cannot wait. I am so excited. I cannot wait for Donald Trump and Kamala Harris to be on the same stage debating the issues that matter to each and every one of us. Reed Cooley, sir, I know you have to be as excited as I am. I mean, just looking forward, to this debate coming up this week.
Yeah, I am not quite as excited as I am for today, however. It's a happy Star Trek day, so live long and prosper, Dan. Happy Star Trek.
Today is?
Yep. Today.
Oh, wow. Reed, speaking of Star Trek and Lord of the Rings.
Star Trek.
Okay, my bad. And so speaking of Star Trek and Lord of the Rings, and there was another one you had mentioned, Dragon Ball Z, for me to watch. I have not watched Dragon Ball Z. Star Trek, that's the one, they're in space.
It's a good start.
Yeah. Okay, so
There's also Star Wars, and I've mentioned that.
Okay, Star Wars is the one I was thinking about.
Yeah.
So I don't know a lot about Star Trek, but I did start watching what I thought was Lord of the Rings. And so, but then you told me that I wasn't watching Lord of the Rings.
It was the Rings of Power. Is that what you told me you were watching?
Well, I thought I was watching Lord of the Rings. And so, but now you're telling me it was on, it's some Rings of Power?
The Rings of Power. Oh, no. I don't even want to mention its name. It's if it feels like the show that shall not be named, almost like a reference to Voldemort and Harry Potter. Another thing we have to get you caught up on. But the Rings of Power, look, I'm the most avid Tolkien fan you'll ever meet in your life. I can promise you. I will never watch the Rings of Power. I certainly never have. The Rings of Power is not real Lord of the Rings. It is a Jeff Bezos funded fan fiction. This is nothing but Amazon trying to just create a bunch of, they're trying to wokeify. No, they're really trying to wokeify the Lord of the Rings.
But Reed, I'm going to put all this blame on you. I mean, I'm blaming you that I have wasted, 3 hours of my life, watching. Now, look, it has been over the last couple of weeks, that I've been watching, some of this, because I get 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here. At nighttime, typically, I'll get in bed and I'll cut on. I thought it was Lord of the Rings. And so, but I guess I've been watching something totally different. But I won't watch any more of it. I will make sure I take a screenshot and send it to you next time before I watch Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, or Star Wars. Of course, I've watched a little bit of Star Wars. And then the Dragon Ball Z, I don't think I'll get to that.
Saying that you watched the Rings of Power when you meant to watch the Lord of the Rings is like saying you watched the Star Wars holiday special when you tried to watch The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. But,
it's okay.
but
like you didn't know any better, so.
But I am excited about the debate. And I'm excited about Donald Trump, Kamala Harris. At first, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think that it was going to happen. And I'm not necessarily convinced that it still is going to happen. And, but I mean, anything can happen, between now and Tuesday night, but, I'm glad that it's going to happen. I really wanted to see Donald Trump debate Kamala Harris. I know that a lot of people on Kamala's team, for what I've read, I've been doing a lot of reading the last several days, and a lot of people on Kamala's team are telling her, not to debate. And then I see people on Donald Trump's team telling Donald Trump not to debate. But then I see people on Kamala Harris's team that are telling Kamala Harris not to debate, that Trump's a crybaby because he won't debate. And then I see people on Trump's team telling him not to debate. And then I think it's good for America that they debate. Look, I think if you're going to run for office, and I don't care what seat it is, if it's supervisor for your county, if it's sheriff, if it's city council, if it's mayor, if it's Congress, if it's I don't care what the office is. I think if you're going to run, and if there's more than one person running, if there are 2 or 3 people, say, running in the Republican primary or the Democrat primary, I think that it's important for the Republican Party. I think it's important for the Democrat Party that those candidates that are running for their party to represent their party in the general election, I think they need to debate. I think it's important. I think that if I was a Republican, and I am a Republican, and if there's 2 or 3 Republicans running, I want to see a debate. The same when it comes to the general election. If there's a Republican and if there's a Democrat running for office and they're running for that same seat, there should be an election. I think it's good for the American people. I think it's good for the American people to see Donald Trump and Kamala Harris on that debate stage, and I think it's good that we see them debate.
Yep, I completely agree. In principle, I mean, if you care enough about the people that you're supposed to be representing in that office, you should be willing to step onto the debate stage and actually debate who the contender is and actually give the voters, give the audience an opportunity to see what it is you stand for, see how you operate under pressure. This debate, I think, is going to be maybe the most important presidential debate in history. I actually do. I understand where you're coming from when you say that you're not 100% certain there's even going to be a debate. I'm with you there. They've said that there are going to be 2 debates in the future. I'm going to be really stunned if there are 2 debates in the future, because let's say Kamala Harris does somehow get the upper hand on Donald Trump in this debate, and her poll numbers go up, and she's able to maintain high poll numbers. She's just going to find a way to refuse doing a debate with Donald Trump. I think the same thing's going to happen if Trump gets the upper hand of this. If Trump can get the upper hand here, Kamala Harris commits a bad gaffe, or he catches her on the spot saying something stupid that the Trump campaign is able to clip over and over again, put it into new kinds of ads. Why would they want a second debate after this, or in Trump's case, a third debate? Because by the time this debate's over, he will have debated 2 different presidential candidates in the same cycle. Something else interesting here is that Kamala Harris's campaign announced she was gonna take 5 days to get ready for this upcoming debate. Why does a candidate need so many days in advance to take away from campaign events and other sorts of things necessary for the campaign to prepare against one debate against one candidate? And it's not like Donald Trump is a newcomer onto the political scene. Donald Trump has obviously been in the spotlight at the center of the stage in American politics for, we could really say, almost a decade now. So why does Kamala Harris need 5, maybe 6 days to prepare for one debate against Donald Trump? And I think it's because she is just that bad on her feet. She has no idea what to do if she's cornered with a question she doesn't expect. I think that she's going to have to just memorize a whole lot of stuff. There's going to be a whole lot of empty platitudes, the occasional stat, the occasional percentage, whole bunch of talking points. That's what she's going to have to do to try to survive this debate, is just memorize a whole bunch of stuff, kind of wing it through there, and try to skirt through this debate with good vibes. Basically, the entire thing she's done through this entire campaign season, just campaigning on vibes rather than policies.
Well, the last debate that they had for the Democrat Party did not go very well.
Right.
And I think that that's the reason why Joe Biden is still not on the ticket. I think because it was such a horrible debate, for Joe Biden. It was such a horrible debate for the Democrat Party. And I think that is why Joe Biden stepped away from running for president, was because he did so bad. And so I do think that is one reason why Kamala is taking these 5 days, is because they know that the last debate that the Democrat Party was a part of, it was such a colossal failure that they cannot afford to have another debate go that bad. Kamala Harris has already proven that she's a very bad, flawed candidate. And so if she comes out and has a very bad debate, I mean, just look at the last interview that her and Tim Walz did. I mean, there's so much that we can say about that, but the fact that she had to have Tim Walz there in her first interview. Now, I get them doing an interview together. That I'm not opposed to. I'm not opposed to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz doing an interview together.
And that's very common.
Yeah,
In past cycles, it's very common for the candidate and the running mate to do
Absolutely.
those together. But it's also very common for the candidate to do an interview by themselves.
Correct.
And whenever it comes to interviews, so just since August the 6th, Trump and Vance have done about 40 interviews. Did you know that?
Oh yeah, I've watched.
Harris and Walz have done one.
Yeah.
And it was that joint little debate, that little performance they did on CNN.
Yeah, absolutely. And Trump and Vance have done a couple of interviews together. I'm okay with that. But you mentioned they've done 40 other interviews. My favorite interview that JD Vance has done was out in front of the plane for the vice president. I love that interview. And he's like, "Hey, are you going to go ask Kamala some questions?" And so I think there's nothing wrong with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz doing an interview together. My problem is you go 20 days without doing an interview at all, and then you don't do any interviews by yourself, and then the interview that you finally do after 20 days is with your running mate. I see a problem with that. And so Donald Trump will do an interview at the drop of a hat. I mean, he will do an interview anytime. He does them all the time. And so will JD Vance. And so for them to do an interview together, look, I watched the interview that they did together. It was great. I watched Kamala Harris and Tim Walz do an interview together. And I realized the reason why they have to do an interview together, because they're both horrible. I mean, both of them. And so Tim Walz and Kamala Harris. And so I think that's one reason though why Kamala's taking these 5 days, going back to that, is because of how bad that last debate was for the Democrat Party. It was so bad that Joe Biden had to step away, from running for office. And the thing that I'm going to say to that as well is if you're not fit to run for president, you ain't fit to be president. And I know that ain't good English, but I'm sorry, but that's just a fact. If you're not fit mentally, if you're not fit physically, if you're not fit emotionally to run for office, then you're not fit to be president. And so I think that the same day that Joe Biden, I think the same day that he walked away from running for office, I think should have been the same day that he resigned as president of the United States of America. And so because he's not fit, he's not ready. Now, it's not that I want Kamala Harris to be president. I'm just trying to make a point that if you're not ready to run for office, you're not ready to be the president. And with saying all that, those in the Democrat Party and Kamala Harris for covering up that just shows how bad they are. Just the fact that they've been lying about that for the last, year, they had to have known. I mean, they know. I mean, Joe Biden lives with the man. She knows that he wasn't fit to run for president, and she knows he's not fit to be president. And so the fact that the whole Democrat Party covered up this is just mind-blowing.
80% of Americans polled say that they think that the Democratic Party lied to them about Joe Biden's mental condition. Donald Trump needs to really hammer Kamala Harris on that and say, why did you hide Joe Biden's mental state from the American people?
Absolutely. I agree. That is one thing that he should hammer her on Tuesday night for sure. Absolutely. And so because they covered that up and they hid that, from the American people. And so it's important who our president is. I mean, the nation, we look to the president. We look to the president. Now, we don't appoint kings and we don't vote in kings, but still the president, we hold that office at a very high regard. Look, I'll just be honest with you. If you get offended by this, so be it. I don't have a lot of respect for Joe Biden. I just don't have a lot of respect for the man. I don't have a lot of respect for Kamala Harris. I don't have a lot of respect for President Barack Obama. I didn't have a lot of respect for Bill Clinton. I didn't have a lot of respect for Bush and a lot of his ways. But I have the utmost respect for that office. I might not respect Joe Biden, but I respect the office of the presidency. I respect that Oval Office. I might not have a lot of respect for the man sitting behind the desk, but I've got a lot of respect for the desk. And so because that is the president of, I believe, the greatest nation in the world. Not just the American people. We're just not looking at the president of the United States, but the world is.
Right.
Russia. Don't you think for a second that the decisions that Vladimir Putin makes, he does not make with the thought process first of who's the president of the United States?
Absolutely, he does. And look at what's happening in the world geopolitically. Every single one of America's enemies are on the move while Kamala Harris is vice president. And while she may very well be in some sense the acting president right now, given that Joe Biden seems to be lounging around on a beach in Delaware or something, leaking ice cream cones, letting his leg hairs bake in the sun or something like that. So it would seem that at least in maybe even more than in a ceremonial sense, Kamala Harris is the acting president right now. America's enemies are on the move. The corporate media and the Democratic Party want to feed us this narrative that America's enemies fear Kamala Harris. Well, if that's true, then why do none of them fear Kamala Harris?
If they feared Kamala Harris, then Vladimir Putin wouldn't have invaded Ukraine.
Right.
If the world feared Kamala Harris, then Hamas wouldn't have went in and attacked Israel the way that they did. If they feared these people, Afghanistan would have never happened the way that it happened. They don't fear Kamala Harris. They don't fear Joe Biden. Now, they fear America. They do fear America. But they don't fear our leadership. They don't fear the president. They don't fear the vice president. When Donald Trump was president of the United States of America, let me ask you a question. How many nations did Russia invade?
0.
Okay. Whenever Donald Trump was president of the United States of America, the terrorist was on the run. They was not on the offense. They was on the run. They was running. They was not evading countries. They were not cutting off innocent people's heads. They were running. They were getting bombs dropped on them.
And you didn't have Venezuelan gangs in Aurora, Colorado. Did you see that, by the way?
Absolutely. Unbelievable.
Yep.
Unbelievable. One of my very favorite interviews that I have watched of Donald Trump, and I have watched quite a bit of Donald Trump's interviews, but Donald Trump was talking to a terrorist over in another country, and he was on the phone with him, and he was on the phone, and the interview that I watched, the interview about the phone call, and so Donald Trump is on the phone, and he's talking to the terrorist. He says, "Hold on a second." He sends him a picture of the guy's house. I mean, as he's talking to this terrorist, he sends him a picture, and basically Donald Trump is saying, "Listen, you don't straighten up. Here's a picture of your house. I know where you live. I know where you're at right now. We can send a missile right down Main Street. It can go to the stop sign. It can take a right turn, take a left, knock on your door, go up to the bedroom that you live in and blow up." That's the kind of military, that's the kind of weaponry that we have whenever you think about the advancement of the technology of the United States of America and our military. And whenever Donald Trump was president, the people like these terrorists, they knew that, hey, Donald Trump, we're not going to mess with anybody while Donald Trump's the president. But the moment Donald Trump was gone, all hell breaks loose. You've got Vladimir invading Ukraine, killing innocent people. You've got Hamas going into Israel, killing innocent people. You've got all the Venezuela, you talked about a while ago. All these things are happening and taking place while Joe Biden is president.
And while Kamala Harris is vice president.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget, she was appointed to be border czar throughout all of this mess.
Yeah, unbelievable. So let's talk about this debate, Reed, that's happening on Tuesday night, because I do think that this debate is very important. I'm not sure how many minds are already not made up of who they're going to vote for.
I've talked to, believe it or not, I have talked to some people over the last couple of weeks who told me they still have not decided. And I thought, how could anybody not decide at this rate?
But here's what I do. Well, that's interesting. But here's what I do think the vote will do. I mean, the debate will do. I think the debate will determine on whether or not people will go and vote for the person that they are committed to vote for. I think that this debate is going to help. If Donald Trump does really well, it's going to help his base. It's going to help rally the base to get out the vote. If Kamala Harris does really well in the eyes of the Democrat Party, I think that it is going to rally, her base to get the vote out. And so I do think that this election, that this debate is very important for the election because, it's interesting, to you to say, that you talk to some people, and I believe you, obviously, but I still think that there's a large majority of the people that have already made up their mind who they're going to vote for. And so this debate is going to help get the vote out, and we desperately need to get the vote out.
Well, let's not underestimate just how important the last debate was. Just as you pointed out a few minutes ago, it was because of that debate that Joe Biden was forced to step down. That was the end of Joe Biden's political career. Not the end of his presidency, unfortunately, but that was the end of his political career. So I think that this debate can do a ton for us. Here's what's interesting to me. Before Biden stepped down, like we just said over the last debate, Kamala Harris was not polling very well against Donald Trump at all. As soon as the Democratic Party replaced their corpse candidate with a living candidate, Kamala Harris, just brain dead, not seemingly completely dead like the previous candidate, whenever they put her in his place, then her poll numbers shot up. And that's because the media was able to come around her and basically sculpt her into this superstar, just beaming with joy, as the Democratic National Convention kept putting it over and over again. Since then, her poll numbers have been all over the place. Sometimes they're way up, sometimes they're way down. It's really interesting to see how that's going. On the other hand, Trump's numbers, I feel like, have remained pretty stagnant over the last several weeks and actually over the last several months. Not a whole lot of really dramatic changes in Donald Trump's polling, as far as I can tell. That's yet another reason I think this debate is going to be so awfully important. I do think there are a lot of scenarios in which Donald Trump wins the debate. I think this is actually a very winnable debate for him. The fact that the mics are going to be cut off whenever each candidate is done speaking, I think that's going to help him a lot. That's going to keep him from being able to interrupt the other candidate. That's going to help him be measured. That was very interesting. A few days ago, I saw CNN actually complaining about the fact that the mics are going to be cut off because CNN wants Donald Trump to make a mistake. They want Donald Trump to lose his temper, and so does Kamala Harris. The fact that the mics are cut off, I think, is a real good advantage for Trump. And I say that as an obvious Trump supporter. Sometimes the man can put his foot in his mouth. Clearly, we both acknowledge that. The mics being cut off, I think, is going to help prevent some of that from being able to take place. But however, it is a lot more difficult for the debate to be a total failure for Kamala Harris because she has the liberal media that will run point on her if she makes a serious boo-boo. If she makes a serious mistake, a serious gaffe, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, they'll all run point for her. They'll all, try to bury it, and they'll do a pretty good job at it. Donald Trump says one little thing that could be wildly taken out of context in some extravagant sort of way. They'll run with it all day. So just like with any debate, I think that it's, the ice is always thinner for Republican candidates. But that's it. I think this is a very winnable debate for Donald Trump. And the debate does have a lot of influence, I think, over the overall trajectory of the election. I think that after Tuesday night, we could be looking at an increase in Trump's polling numbers, thankfully.
You mentioned the debate, the rules. So let me go through the rules real quick with the debate rules. And I agree with everything you just said. I think that this debate is very important for Donald Trump. Probably more important for Donald Trump than for Kamala Harris, because you're right. The media is going to cover Kamala Harris. They're going to, I believe what I read just last week was 80% of the press, 80% of the news about Kamala Harris from the press is all positive, 20% negative. It's the exact opposite with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is 80%. 80% of the news coverage of Donald Trump from the press, 80% is negative, 20% positive. So whenever you have that going for you, I mean, the news media, they're in the pocket for Kamala Harris. And unfortunately, whenever you look at us conservatives, we don't have very much strong conservative news outlets here in our great nation. We don't have a large reach. Now, that's one reason why I'm so thankful for the Midnight Ride, is because the Midnight Ride is doing everything that they can, that we can to get out our message, our conservative message. It helps. It helps whenever you have 80% of the news coverage from the media, from the big time media, is negative about Donald Trump. It's good to have us, we're coming in and we're trying to do all that we can whenever it comes to being positive about Donald Trump and speaking truth about Kamala Harris. We're not making up anything about Kamala Harris. The left, the media, they're doing all that they can to destroy Donald Trump. I mean, they're making up stuff about Donald Trump. I mean, they're doing all that they can to destroy the man. We just report and we just talk about facts, news. Kamala Harris was appointed to be over the border. She's done a horrible job at it. I mean, horrible, the worst ever. And so I do think that this debate is very important for Donald Trump. You mentioned microphones will be live only for the candidates whose turn it is to speak and muted when the time belongs to another candidate. I do think that's great for Donald Trump. I think that's good because, let's just face it. Donald Trump is a New Yorker, and Donald Trump is not going to be quiet. You are not going to tell the man to be quiet. And let's just be honest about this. That's the kind of man that I want whenever it comes to sitting down and debating with people like Vladimir Putin. That's the kind of man that I want whenever you're sitting down talking to the president of China, dealing with the North Korean president. You want a man or a woman that has conviction, that is not going to just be pushed around and pushed into a corner, but they're going to stand firm upon what they believe in. And I'm not just saying that's Donald Trump because he's a man, because I believe that there are a lot of good women out there that are like that. I could think of several women, who are in very high positions in government who I thought would have made a great VP pick. And so, but I do think that is good for Donald Trump that the microphones would be muted. Now, this is interesting, Reed, was that a coin flip was held virtually on Tuesday this past week to determine the podium placement and the order of closing statements. Donald Trump won the coin toss. And so he got the pick, on whether or not he was the order of statement, or he got the pick where the podium was going to go. So Donald Trump, he won the coin toss and he chose to select the order of statements. So Donald Trump is going to go last with the closing statement. They're not going to have an opening statement. They're going to go right to questions, but they are going to have a closing statement. And Donald Trump will offer the last closing statement. Vice President Harris selected the right podium position on the screen. So when you're looking at the screen, her podium position is going to be right. It's going to be stage left. And so I thought that was interesting that they did a coin flip. Kind of reminds me of football. I'm not sure how many people watch the football, but my boys play on a high school football team. And matter of fact, last week they played their first game, and then, so it was exciting, a lot of fun, and they're going to be playing a lot more games and coming up. So they always do a coin flip, and they do a coin flip, and the team gets to decide on do they want the ball now or do you want the ball in the second half? And so they get to choose it. So that's kind of what they did with the election or with the debate. They did a coin flip. and they let Donald Trump decide because he won. Already said this, but there'll be no opening statements, and the closing statements will be 2 minutes per candidate. Let me ask you a question. What do you think in that 2 minutes that Donald Trump is going to give his closing statement? Where do you think he ought to focus those 2 minutes?
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took My Pillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented My Pillow to bring you the best pillow in history, My Pillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that My Pillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The My Pillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last My Pillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. My Pillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new My Pillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a My Pillow or not, you need to get the brand new My Pillow 2.0. Call or go to mypillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit mypillow.com.
Escape to Pearl River Resort.
Well, Dan, I want to say that I've actually been pretty impressed with some of the speeches that Trump has given lately. Just a couple of days ago, he actually gave a very, very good speech on the economy, and he did a very good job touting the kind of economy that he presided over in the White House, and that he left us with. What I think he's going to do is, and what I hope he does, and I do feel optimistic that he's going to do this, he's going to keep it focused on policy, particularly that concluding statement that you were just asking me about. And I think that he's going to keep it focused on just ways that everyday moms and pops, everyday Americans were better off under his first term, and ways they will be better off under his second term than they have been throughout this 4 miserable years of the Biden-Harris administration. So I think keeping it laser focused on the economy. I mean, even those people in those deep blue states who are being brainwashed with corporate media propaganda into supporting whatever Democratic candidate comes along, even those people have to pay for gas and groceries. Everybody feels the pain at the pump, at the supermarket, so on and so forth. Man, I hope that's where he keeps it. And I think that just based on what I've seen from some of his speech writers lately, I think that's where he's going to keep it.
Yeah, I hope so. Hope you're right.
Teleprompter Trump is the Trump that wins.
So I have noticed that gas is starting to come down a little bit, and it always does.
Always does.
Always revs at election time.
Oh, yeah.
And especially whenever they're pushing their candidate, and so I do appreciate cheaper gas, but it still isn't as low as it was whenever Donald Trump was president. And so they still have a long ways to go to try to get it down to that price. And so each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes to answer each question, with a 2-minute rebuttal and an additional minute for follow-up, clarification, or response. And so what that means is this, that they're going to ask a question. The candidate has 2 minutes to answer. The other candidate has 2 minutes to rebuttal that answer. And then the person that was first asked a question gets 1 minute for clarification or follow-up. And so I think that's good. And so I do like that rule. And then Also, I really like this rule, is that candidates will stand behind podiums for the duration of the debate. So they're not going to be sitting down. I know Kamala Harris's team wanted it to be sitting down, but they're not. They're going to be standing behind a podium, and they'll have no props, no pre-written notes. Will be allowed on the stage. I love that. That's great. I mean, Donald Trump he's a genius. And whenever it comes to just being able to bring things, back to remembrance and things of that nature. And so he'll do really well, with that. Each candidate will be given a pen, a pad, a paper, and a bottle of water. So they will have a pen, they will have paper, so they can take notes during the debate. And we saw a little bit of that in the last debate, where they were, I think Joe Biden he was either drawing or maybe drawing ice cream or write something down, on the pad. And so that's pretty much the rules of the debate and how the rules are supposed to be. It's very simple debate, nothing complicated, nothing too harsh, just a good debate. We're going to start the debate with asking questions. You get 2 minutes to answer, 2 minutes to rebuttal, 1 minute for clarification. At the end of the debate, you get 2 minutes for a closing statement. Donald Trump gets to go first since he won the virtual flip of the coin. Kamala Harris gets to pick what side of the podium. She picked her side of the podium, and so Donald Trump gets to go last on the closing statement, and I like that Donald Trump is the last person, to go. And the only negative to Donald Trump going last is that more people will stay tuned in, and they'll get to hear, Kamala Harris's last closing statements. Most people would probably cut the TV off once Donald Trump, gets done because they want to watch, Kamala Harris. But anyway, that's the rules, of the debate. Also, this is important to understand, is that campaign staff may not interact with candidates during commercial breaks. So when they have a commercial break, campaign staff cannot it says it may not interact with candidates. So they cannot be able to interacting, with the candidate. And so I really like that.
I like that too. So do you remember whenever Vivek Ramaswamy asked Nikki Haley in one of the old Republican debates that I'm sure neither one of us really ever sat there and watched? He asked her to name 3 provinces in Ukraine, and she couldn't do it. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
That was amazing. So you might remember it was after a commercial break. She came back in and she tried to just suddenly name three provinces in Ukraine, try and make up for that, right? Because she met with her campaign staff during that commercial break. She tried to recoup from that moment. What this allows here, what you're talking about, no communicating with the campaign staffers during commercial breaks, that's going to prevent Kamala Harris from being able to run to her campaign staffers during that commercial break. To get answers to questions, to cheat, to get any kind of refreshers. I really do think this is very common for conservative commentators to say right now, but I think it's true. I think that the more that people see of Kamala Harris, the more of a dunce she seems to be, right? And I'm not trying to say that to be ugly, but the more that people see of her, the more they realize there's not a whole lot of special interest to her. I think that the longer this debate goes on, the more that that mask is going to peel off.
Yeah, I agree, man. And so now let's talk about what Trump needs to do. Let's talk about that for a little bit. I think the first thing is this, that Trump needs to stay focused. He cannot get drawn in to a trap. And if I'm Kamala Harris, I'm going to try to draw Trump in. I'm going to go after Trump hard. I'm going to go after his family. I'm going to go after, these indictments. I'm going to go after everything that I possibly can. I'm going to come after him to try to draw Trump in is what I'm going to do if I'm Kamala Harris. But if I'm Trump, we got to stay focused. Kamala Harris says Trump's a bad man. Kamala Harris was over the border. I mean, she was over the border. And as she's over the border, we've got all these illegals coming into, the country. Just pivot back to how bad of a vice president Kamala Harris has been. Just pivot it back. No matter what they say, no matter what Kamala Harris says, just pivot it back and just stay focused, because they're going to try to get him off track. They're going to try to get him all focused because they don't want to talk about policy. They don't want to talk about the border. They don't want to talk about the fentanyl coming across the border. They don't want to talk about the illegals, that have killed, and raped some of the women here, many of the women here in our nation. They want to get focused on a lot of things that just doesn't matter in the grand scheme of our nation. They don't want to talk about policy. And so Kamala Harris is going to try to pull him to try to get him all focused. So I think the first thing, Donald Trump, I hope his team is telling him, Reed, listen, Mr. President, you've got to stay focused. You cannot get into a tyrant. You have to stay focused, because Kamala Harris is going to try to play the victim. Yep. You mentioned that earlier. She's going to try to play the victim. And she wants to be seen as the victim. And so Trump he cannot get off track.
I think one thing that a mistake he could make, and I hope he doesn't do this, obviously, is if he brings up her past with Willie Brown. I think that's a huge trap right there because, number one, it's so inconsequential in comparison to the other real issues that Americans are facing, right? Like, yeah, we all understand that Kamala Harris got her start in politics by sleeping with Willie Brown, one of the most powerful people in California politics. I don't care about that nearly as much as I care about the fact that we have an invasion going on at our southern border, just to keep it limited to one example. And if Trump attacks her on that, it's not just a distraction. Kamala Harris is going to hit Donald Trump with his previous, I'm going to use a euphemism here, his romantic improprieties, right? It's going to turn into quicksand. It's going to just be nasty. It's going to be a totally unproductive kind of debate. So Trump needs to stay away from that. And as we've said several times in this show, just stick to the policy. Stick to what matters.
Yeah, it needs to be Willie Brown who. Willie Brown who. Just, you're right. Stay focused on policy. Stay focused. Let's talk about this border. I would absolutely talk about the border. The border is important to people. The border is important to Republicans. It's important to a lot of Democrats, and it's important to the independents that we need to get on our side and vote for Trump. And so talk about the border. Talk about the millions of illegals that have come across the border. Talk about the drugs, the amount of drugs that's come across the border. Talk about the Americans that have died because of these illegal drugs coming across the border. Talk about the women that have been raped, because of these illegals coming across the border. Talk about the children that have been murdered because of these illegals coming across the border. I would talk about that. Absolutely just hammer that. People have lost their lives because illegals have come across the border, and Kamala Harris has been in charge of the border the last 3.5 years. We've had an unprecedented amount of fentanyl coming across the border, and the reason is because Kamala Harris has been in charge of the border over the last 3.5 years. I would hit that so many times. I would just come back to Kamala Harris has been in charge of the border, and look at how bad it is. I mean, look at the millions of illegals coming across. Look at all the drugs. Look at all these people coming across, the border, and Kamala Harris has been in charge. So stay focused on that border. Talk about the border. I think, Reed, that's very important.
Absolutely. Completely agree with everything you just said.
And if you get off into Willie Nelson or Brown or whoever it was you're talking about,
that's definitely not Willie Nelson.
Okay, so you get off into all of that, and I don't really know who Willie Brown is. I think I know who Willie Nelson is, and you get into all that kind of stuff. Like people said, I'm like, Willie Brown, is that a cartoon? Isn't there a cartoon with Brown or something? I don't know, but that's just what people are going to be thinking. No, I want to talk about, why do we have all these millions of people coming across, the border? I want to talk about why I'm paying $5 for a gallon of milk. Let's talk about that for a moment. Let's talk about why eggs are so expensive. Let's talk about why a loaf of bread is as expensive as a loaf of bread is. Let's talk about sugar and how expensive sugar is. And God knows that I love my sugar for my sweet tea. Let's talk about those things. Why is a gallon of milk $5 almost? Why is gas so high? Why are interest rates as high as they are? Why is all of these things? Why am I paying double for groceries than I paid under Donald Trump? Why? Why is it? I'll tell you why, America. It is because of the policy. The policy of Donald Trump, the policy of the Republican Party. Our policy drives prices down, while the Democrat policy drives prices up. Here's what they say. They say, we're going to lower taxes. We're going to lower. The only thing I've seen over the last 3.5 years, Reed, as things go higher. Listen, I have 5 children.
People's optimism in the future of the country is going lower.
Absolutely. I have 5 children.
Standard of living is going lower.
Yeah. And we drink a lot of milk here. I know I probably shouldn't because of my health, but every single night I drink a glass of chocolate milk. And I drink every night.
Why you watch The Rings of Fire?
Yeah. Well, I normally read a book or something like that, but I've been trying to catch up with this young generation of Lord of the Rings and Star Trek, Star Wars, and Dragon Ball Z. And so I'm trying to catch up to this young, generation. And so I'm working on it. But I typically like to read, or I like to watch something funny. Unfortunately, I deal with a lot of bad stuff almost all the time, dealing with problems, just constantly. It's just part of the work, that I'm in, which is fine. And so I like to read things that are good. I like to watch comedy stuff. But every night, I'm going to drink a glass of milk. Well, I have 6 other people in my house that drink milk as well. I'm buying 3 or 4 gallons of milk a week. And so it's expensive. Why is milk $5? I mean, do they have to go to Mars to get it? I mean, are they having to send a plane to Pluto? No, you get milk from animals, from cows. And typically that's the kind of milk that I like. And so, but my point is simply stay focused on that. On why milk is so expensive. Why am I paying so much for gas? Yes.
Why is home ownership looking more and more like a pipe dream for my generation?
Absolutely it is.
Depended in large part on people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Absolutely. As gas prices go up, grocery prices go up. As prices come down, grocery prices come down. Gas drives a lot in the market. It just does. Gas drives a lot because that's how groceries get from point A to point B. Obviously, they don't just happen to get there themselves. That food doesn't just happen to get on Walmart's shelf. Somebody somewhere has to either grow it, farm it, and then they have to put it in trucks and drive it somewhere. And so it's machines operated by gas, fuel. It's trucks operated by gas, fuel. I mean, so fuel drives the cost of living either up or down. And then interest rates control the buying power of someone. So if the interest rates are 6%, your buying power is not going to be as much as your interest rates if they're 3% or if they're 2%. Your buying power fluctuates because of the interest rates. So as the interest rates go up, your buying power comes down. As the interest rates come down, your buying power goes up. If you have a house that is $300,000 for a house, or let's just easy math. Say $250,000 for a house at a 5% interest rate. Your note is going to be around $1,800. That is not counting insurance. That's not counting your taxes. That's just your cost and your interest rate. $250,000 is, I'm guessing, around $1,800 a month, give or take. That could be also a little bit of taxes in there as well. But you take $300,000 house or $250,000 house, interest rates at 3%. Well, your note is going to come down dramatically. It's going to come down $600-$700. It's going to come down a lot. Don't hold me to those numbers because I'm just talking on top of my head. What I do know is a fact is that a 6% interest rate will not allow someone to buy a house that is more expensive as a 3% interest rate. A 6% interest rate, somebody might can afford a $250,000 house. A 3% interest rate, somebody might can afford a $400,000 house. So the size of house changes, the type of house changes, everything changes because of interest rates. And so if I'm Donald Trump, that's what I'm hammering. I'm staying on policy. I'm staying on the price of your groceries are up. Why? Because of the policy of this administration. The interest rates are up. Why? Because of the rates, because of the policy of this administration. And so stay focused and stay on policy.
Absolutely. Brilliantly put, Dan.
Thank you. And so, but that's what it has to be. It has to stay on those things. If you get in the weeds, we lose. Because the next month, all they're going to talk about on the media is how bad Donald Trump did, or Donald Trump said this. It doesn't matter what Kamala Harris says. Kamala Harris can get up there and sing, old McDonald had a farm.
She could talk about how much she loves yellow school buses again.
And it doesn't care. And they're going to run a commercial about how much Kamala Harris loves children.
She's just beating with joy. Can't you just feel the joy?
And so Donald Trump has to stay. He has to stay on course. He has to keep it about policy.
Always a tougher road for us.
Because it doesn't matter what Kamala says. They'll make her look like she's a goddess. Donald Trump could pull off a perfect debate and just be perfect in everything, and they're still going to try to make him look like a criminal. That's just the media of today. And unfortunately, Fox isn't with us in a large part either.
I completely agree. Just the direction writing op-eds for.
Yeah, just the direction of Fox and the direction that they're going. Seems like they're just an extension of the Democrat Party in large part.
Why do you think Sean Hannity wears a CIA pin on the show? Why do you think I stopped going on Fox News after some time? Why do you think I haven't gone on there in a couple of years? This is exactly why. Why do you think they fired Tucker Carlson?
Yeah, and that's why I haven't watched. I cannot tell you the last time that I have watched Sean Hannity or have listened to him on the radio.
He gets to keep his job, but Tucker lost his for speaking the truth, by the way, about the January 6th prison.
Tucker? Absolutely. I watched Tucker Carlson. And
he was the reason I called into Fox News for as long as I did.
I like him. I like Ben Shapiro. I like watching Ben Shapiro. I like watching Charlie. I like watching him. I like watching those guys, but I haven't wasted 5 minutes with Sean Hannity. I'd as soon watch Anderson Cooper than watch Sean Hannity. And I'm not going to watch Anderson Cooper, but I'd as soon watch Anderson Cooper over Sean Hannity. But my point is coming back to, we got to stay focused on policy.
Yep.
We got to say we cannot get into personality because I'm not voting personality. I'm voting for policy. And let me mention something else too, because boy, there have been a lot of people talking about this pro-life, pro-choice thing. And Reed, I am very, very pro-life. Like, I don't believe that we should ever murder a baby.
If our audience isn't acquainted with how pro-life you are by now, then I don't know what to tell them.
I'm very, very pro-life.
We both are.
People ask, well, what about a tubal pregnancy? Well, first off,
Sorry, a what?
a tubal pregnancy. My wife has had a couple of miscarriages, and they were tubal pregnancies. That is not an abortion. A tubal pregnancy is not an abortion. I have a lady in my church right now. We've tried to help them out as much as we can over the last week. She is dealing with a miscarriage, and it was a tubal pregnancy. That is not abortion. That is not an abortion. And so they want to try to say, well, if it's you're trying to tell me that if it's in a tubal pregnancy and the life of the mother, then we can't go in it. The baby's not going to survive. It's not going to survive. So that is completely different, but that's to try the scenarios that they use in order to be, you have to have the choice, the choice. And then they try to use a lot of other outlandish things, as far as, trying to have an opportunity to murder, a baby. I was listening to, somebody sent me a video this week of this lady preacher talking about how if Jesus was alive today, that he would be okay with abortion.
Well, this is a controversial view of mine. There's no such thing as a female preacher. There are only females who can pretend to be preachers. That might get me into a lot of trouble. I don't care. I'm not coming on God and Country and working for the Midnight Ride and building this company, so I can say the same conservative talking points that people hear every day. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but go ahead.
But she came on, and she said, and I agree with you, this lady preacher, I don't believe ladies are to be pastoring. Absolutely not. I don't believe that, biblically speaking, ladies should be pastoring. But this lady preacher, she gets on TV and she says that if Jesus was alive, that he would be for abortion. Matter of fact, she even went as far to say that Jesus was a blessed are the women. And she went on to say she's had 2 abortions. If I could have reached through that TV and slapped her upside the head, I probably would have. Because you're going to say that my Lord, my Savior would be for abortion? Unbelievable. My point I'm getting back to is this, that I am very pro-life. I do not believe that Donald Trump is as pro-life as I am. I don't believe that he is. Do I believe that Donald Trump is pro-life? I think that Donald Trump is pro-life to an extent. But I don't think that he's as pro-life as I am. I think that he and I would not agree totally on this one issue of pro-life. But let me just make something very clear. Kamala Harris is for murdering babies up to 9 months. Kamala Harris is for nationalizing pro-choice. She is for making it not a state issue, but a national issue is what Kamala Harris is for. Donald Trump is for state rights. This issue of life is a state right issue.
Absolutely.
Just as I think education is. I think education ought to be a state issue. Just as I think a lot of these agencies that are in D.C. that are causing all kind of issues for states, I think most of those agencies should be state issues. When it comes to marriage, that ought to be a state issue. Actually, let me back up. Marriage ought to be an issue between a man and a woman. The state should not even be involved in that. I think the state getting involved in marriage and marriage license and all that stuff, I think the state ought to be out of all that. But it's just another way that the state can garnish money. But whenever it comes to the states, Donald Trump is for this pro-life issue being a state issue. He is for pushing it to the state. And let me remind people that Donald Trump is the one that appointed 3 Supreme Court justices that overturned Roe versus Wade. And so the reason why this issue is being kicked to the state is because of Donald Trump's appointments to the Supreme Court. We can't forget that. When it comes down to the rubber met the road, Donald Trump appointed 3 very strong pro-life justices to the Supreme Court. If that had been Hillary Clinton, if that had been Joe Biden, if that had been Kamala Harris, Roe would have never been overturned. We would have never had the opportunity at a state level to get rid of abortion, as we have in Mississippi, as we have in Louisiana, as we have in many other states, because of Donald Trump's view on who he's going to appoint to the bench of the Supreme Court. And so we can't forget that. So I'm hearing a lot of rhetoric, and and listen, you can't get much more pro-life than I am. But I also need to remember that it's important that we have somebody in office, we have somebody that is president that believes in the issue of life, but also believes in the importance of this issue being a state issue, not a federal issue. And that's the difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris wants to nationalize it. She wants to override the states. She wants to reinstate Roe, and she wants it to be a issue that anybody can get an abortion anytime you want, up to 9 months.
Utterly insane. Utterly insane. Yeah, and whenever it comes to the debate this week, Kamala Harris is going to hit Donald Trump on this very hard. There is a reason why abortion is suddenly becoming a news cycle with just a couple of months left before Election Day. And that is because typically, whenever abortion becomes a news cycle on Election Day, that disadvantages Republicans. It costs Republican candidates support among women voters, not so much in the South, but elsewhere, particularly in the Midwest and in the blue states. So I give the left coast and the Northeast, right? So I think that Trump needs to avoid talking about abortion at all. Whenever Kamala Harris attacks Trump on abortion, Trump is going to say that he's in favor of it up until like 15 weeks. I don't like that. That is not the optimal policy position. But if that policy position, let's say hypothetically, were implemented across all 50 states, that would still result in far, far, far fewer abortions than if Kamala Harris's views on abortion were federalized across all 50 states. So Donald Trump is still, without question, the better choice, not just because he's closer to the sort of pro-life absolutist stance that I have, but also because he's for states' rights. And it is a states' rights issue at the end of the day.
Absolutely. It ought to be a state rights, and it ought to be to the people. You know, I had an organization for a while called Let Mississippi Vote. And the whole thing was geared around the Mississippians being able to vote on certain issues. And I think that this is an issue where Mississippians should vote, where everyone should vote. And we have. You know, Mississippians have voted, Louisianans have, people are voting around the nation. And it goes back to, the reason is because Donald Trump appointed 3 very strong pro-life justices to the Supreme Court, which is very important in this issue. And so another thing too, you know, that you see and that you hear, you know, people talking about, well, I'm just going to stay home and not vote. Oh my goodness. You know, I've heard that so much. And we cannot stay home and not vote. It is imperative that we as conservatives, it is imperative that we as Christians, that we get out and vote, and we vote in groves. Because not just the president is up for election. You have, in Mississippi, we are voting for our Supreme Court. In Mississippi, we are voting for appellate court. In Mississippi, we are voting for Congress. You know, we have every single congressional seat in Mississippi, every single congressional seat in America is up for election. Every one of them. And a lot of Senate seats are even up for election. And so we cannot just stay home and vote. Stay home and not vote. If we stay home and not vote, we're going to lose Supreme Court seats in states. We're going to lose appellate court seats in states. We're going to lose congressional seats. We're going to lose a lot of seats if we just stay home and vote. We cannot afford to do that. We have got to get out and vote, because we have the president's on the line, the House is on the line, some Supreme Courts in some of these states are on the line, appellate courts are on the line. All of these seats are on the line. And so we cannot afford to stay home and vote. We have got to get out and vote.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think, as you can tell by now, having done 23 episodes of God and Country with me, God bless your soul putting up with me for that long, Dan. I don't consider myself a typical kind of conservative. You know, it frustrates me. I bring that up because it frustrates me. I've seen other people like attacking Trump from the right, people with whom maybe I agree on a lot of other issues, right? They're attacking Trump on the right on the issue of abortion specifically. They're saying that, well, because Trump is making concessions on the issue of abortion, we shouldn't vote for Donald Trump. We should just stay home and not vote. I'm seeing that happen a lot. I'm seeing it on X in particular. Like, I'm seeing it become a very popular narrative among these terminally online just, keyboard warriors who claim to be conservatives in one stripe or another, saying that they're not going to vote at all because they can't stand the fact that Donald Trump is not a 100% pro-life absolutist. I am a pro-life absolutist, okay? I am. I'm not trying to bring my theology to this show. God and Country is not a Catholic-specific show, but I have a Catholic view towards the issue of abortion specifically. I'm an absolutist on it. And even I am saying, yes, it's not great that Donald Trump isn't exactly where I stand on the issue of abortion, not completely, but he is our only choice. The way that we reduce the number of abortions in this country is by making sure that Donald Trump gets reelected. It's that simple.
Reed, I agree, and I have enjoyed this show. This has been a great show today. And as I say every single time as we close off and as we go off the air, is that we need you to help us. If you don't share God and Country on X, if you don't share it on Facebook, if you don't share it on YouTube, then our message doesn't get out. I mean, these social media platforms, for the most part, the algorithms are not in favor of conservative news like us, like God and Country. So if you're watching this on X, retweet it. If you're watching it on Facebook, hit the share button. If you're watching on YouTube, copy and paste the link and send it to your friends and family. Tell everybody you can about God and Country. Reed, I've enjoyed it. Thanks for all of everything that you're doing for the Midnight Ride. Thanks for everything that you're doing for God and Country. I know you and I both are looking forward to watching this debate.
Yep, and live long and prosper.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching. God bless you, and God bless the great United States of America.
Hey guys, it's Reed here. I don't say this about a lot of people, but I have to say Mike Lindell is a real patriot, and we could not be more thankful to him and MyPillow for sponsoring today's episode of God and Country. Remember, go to MyPillow.com and save huge on a great night of sleep by entering the promo code Midnight Ride. Thanks.